Welcome to CBS Sports HQ. Happy Monday, everybody. I am Jenny Dell, and it is mid-February, which means a few things. So spring training is upon us. We're starting to zero in on college hoops, and football, well, it never really stops. So the Super Bowl is complete. It's officially the NFL offseason, although for many teams, it's already been an incredibly busy few weeks. But tomorrow, Tuesday, February 18th, the NFL two-week franchise tag window open. So if you don't know exactly what that means, the franchise tag, it's a tool that the NFL teams can use to keep their best players from leaving in free agency. If a player is tagged, they receive a one-year tender. So 2 weeks, that brings us to March 4th at 4 p.m. Looking at players who were tagged last season. So the Bengals, they tagged wide receiver T. Higgins. Higgins still looking for that long-term contract, one of the top free agents yet again. Cornerback L'Jarius Sneed, he was an interesting one with Kansas City as the two, they were open to trade talks. They couldn't come to a long-term deal. He ended up with the Titans. Then we have Buccaneers with Anton Winfield Jr. Burns was tagged by the Panthers. The Panthers were reportedly willing to go up to $27 million per season on a 5-year deal, but instead he got tagged. He ended up as a New York Giant. The Patriots, they placed a tag on safety Kyle Duggar. That transition tag cost the Patriots $13.8 million. We got two men that never stop, and that comes with the world of the NFL that we are currently living in right now. We have Douzable and Bryant McFadden. Let's talk about some of the franchise tags for this season. So the Bengals kept T. Higgins off the open market this year with that $21.816 million franchise tag. His quarterback, Joe Burrow, recently came out expressing confidence about the Bengals retaining Higgins. It'll cost them over $26 million to do so. So, B-Mac, it's no secret he wants a long-term deal. What do you think is going to happen?
I don't foresee Cincinnati tagging T. Higgins again because, of course, he got tagged a year ago. But when you look at the financial circumstances they're currently dealing with the Cincinnati Bengals, you cannot afford to tag T. Higgins and pay Jamar Chase. That's going to be a very tall, daunting task to do. And the reality of that happening, I don't see, because Jamar Chase will get paid this season, right? He kind of, when you look at what he went through a year ago, he wanted to get paid, and then he kind of came back down to his senses and said, you know what, I'm just going to ahead and ball out and play again. Well, all he did was have a career-like year, earning the Triple Crown, and now he has created more financial leverage for himself and pushing the organization to pay him. So if you're going to pay Jamar Chase, and you better believe he's going to get a record-breaking wide receiver deal, it's almost impossible to tag T. Higgins. So yes, they will try to find a way to finagle a situation where he could receive an extension. But in terms of the franchise tag happening again for T. Higgins, knowing that Jamar Chase will get paid, and oh, by the way, Trey Hendrickson, he also wants an extension as well. I don't know if they have the means to do so with one player receiving a hefty franchise tag price.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, B-Mac. You got to think the franchise tag for a second time for T. Higgins would amount to somewhere around $26 million. JD already told us that. From a franchise standpoint, B-Mac, though, it does make a lot of sense because you would assume that if T. Higgins hits the open market, we know true number one receivers don't usually hit the open market. He's probably going to demand $30+ million. So essentially you would get him at a discount. But because of what you talked about, right? Jamar Chase, right, the Triple Crown winner, he is going to want to eclipse Justin Jefferson's $35 million a year mark, which rightfully so he deserves. We just talked about it. He won the Triple Crown last year. He led the NFL not only in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. So they're going to have to pay him at least $35.5 million a year. And it's almost like the Dallas Cowboys, right? They kicked the can down the road. They should have paid him last year before Justin Jefferson got paid. Maybe they would have been able to get T. Higgins under a deal if they paid Jamar Chase last year. And to another one of your points, Trey Hendrickson, right? He wanted a contract extension. He wanted his deal reworked. I think he's slated to make around $20 million a year. Well, B-Mac, we know the top edge rushers in football make $30+ million. Trey Hendrickson led the NFL in sacks last year with 17.5 sacks last year. So you got to think he's turning 30. He's going to want at least $25 million. So there's a lot of players that they have to play, frontline players. So I don't foresee T. Higgins getting the tag this year.
T. Higgins coming out, understanding the position he's in right now, saying, obviously, I'd love to be here in Cincinnati. I love the city. I love the fans. I love the coaching staff, everything in the building. But that's not in my control, and it certainly is not in his control, especially when you have all that talent around you. That's for sure. All right, the Minnesota Vikings, they have kind of an interesting situation here at quarterback with Sam Darnold. So he signed that one-year, $10 million deal to be the bridge quarterback from Kirk Cousins. They obviously got J.J. McCarthy as the 10th overall pick in last year's draft, and McCarthy gets hurt. Sam Darnold comes in, plays way better than anyone ever expected until those last two games that were out there. So what do they do with him, B-Mac?
Well, having an opportunity to speak with head coach Kevin O'Connell in New Orleans during the Super Bowl, he emphasized how much he would love to have Sam Darnold back in a Vikings uniform. But he also admitted that he realized because of his play, he will be one of the hottest quarterbacks in the free agent market. So what I could see happening with Sam Darnold in the Minnesota Vikings, Leger, is something that we saw similar to what Jenny talked about in our intro with Brian Burns and the Carolina Panthers. I can see Minnesota tagging Sam Darnold. I think that franchise tag for quarterbacks would be roughly around $40 million. And knowing that he will be a hot commodity on the free agent market, where they can potentially get something in return for his services if a team wants to trade for Sam Darnold. So when you look at how watered down this free agent quarterback class is, he is the cream of the crop. And there are a few teams that will love to have his services, especially looking at how he played a year ago. So in this situation for Minnesota, it's better to play chess than checkers. So tagging Sam Darnold and knowing that there will be a team that will be willing to trade for Sam Darnold and you get resources in return actually makes the most sense. And if worst case scenario, there's no one willing to trade for Sam Darnold, you still have a starting quarterback playing in a fairly good deal, team-friendly deal with a $40 million price tag on his head, if that is the case in the worst-case scenario position for the Minnesota Vikings.
Sam Darnold, tag, you're it. The Minnesota Vikings have to tag him, B-Mac. And there's so much to decipher in when you talk about tagging Sam Darnold. One, right, you know this, B-Mac, for a quarterback, usually going into the second year of an offense, you feel like you're more acclimated, right? You're more comfortable in the offense. Sam Darnold was with Kevin O'Connell for only 1 year, and you see the numbers right there. He threw for over 4,300 yards, 35 passing touchdowns, which was both top 5 in the NFL. Yes, Sam Darnold could potentially hit the open market and get upwards to $45, maybe $50 million, but is that going to serve him in his future, right? Is he going to have the type of production that he had with Kevin O'Connell? From the Minnesota Vikings standpoint, right, J.J. McCarthy, you talked about it, J.D., they took him in the first round, but he's coming off a major injury, and he didn't play his entire rookie season, so essentially, this will be his rookie season. So if you're the Minnesota Vikings, why not develop J.J. McCarthy throughout an entire season one more time? Because this will be his rookie season. He didn't take any live game reps throughout the season. So now you have Sam Darnold, who you went 14-3 with. You bring him back with Kevin O'Connell. He's more acclimated in the offense. He's more comfortable in the offense. You would think he would play even at a higher level. And there's something to be said about having continuity at the quarterback position, which the Minnesota Vikings have not had the last couple of years since Kirk Cousins got hurt. They played a bevy of quarterbacks last year, and Kevin O'Connell still almost had them in playoff contention. You don't think Kevin O'Connell would love to have the same quarterback under center for 2 years? Justin Jefferson would love it as well. And you still get to develop J.J. McCarthy as your quarterback for the future.
JJ did show some flashes in that preseason game before the injury, but I'm sure could benefit from learning a year under a guy out there. All right, we're going to move on now to the Chiefs guard, Trey Smith. He's a top O-lineman with an expiring contract out there. Now, interior offensive linemen, they rarely get franchise tagged. It doesn't happen very often. So do you think KC will try to keep him? It would be around a $23 million tag there, Leger.
Yeah, I don't foresee them tagging them because you stated it, JD. The guard position for the franchise tag is around 23, almost $24 million. The top guards in the NFL are making $20 million. And it'll be interesting to see what the Chiefs are going to do because they obviously have a major issue, not just at left tackle, but right tackle. Jawan Taylor, who I believe is under contract for $20 million next year, he struggled a lot as well. It's rare, B-Mac, to find a team where your interior three are all making $16+ million because Joe Thuney's under contract for $16 million next year. Creed Humphrey's under contract for $18 million. I believe Trey Smith hits the open market and does get $20+ million. Now, the Chiefs would love to have him back because when he's in the lineup with those other two guys, Creed Humphrey and Joe Thuney, they have the best interior three in all of football. But they have glaring issues, the Kansas City Chiefs, at the left tackle and right tackle position that they have to fix. So I don't foresee them tagging them because that would be more than what the top guards are making in the league right now. I do foresee Trey Smith hitting the open market.
You mentioned there, Landon Dickerson with the Eagles set the market at $21 million per year. It's a lot of money out there. We're going to talk about the Dolphins now. They let defensive tackle Christian Wilkins test free agency this year because of cap restraints. The same could happen with safety Javon Holland out there. So B-Mac, he hasn't really done himself any favors with his play this year. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, when you look at Javon Holland, to your point, this past season was not his best. The other 3 years in a Miami Dolphins uniform was far better. But I still believe he has a high ceiling within the National Football League, not to mention within the Dolphins organization. So worst case scenario, I could see them potentially tagging him to kind of buy themselves time to work out some type of extension because he is the second best player in their secondary behind Jalen Ramsey. He's a guy who's a do-it-all type player. He's sound in coverage. He's a reliable tackler, and you can also implement him in blitz concepts. So I think when you look at what he's done throughout his professional career outside of this one rare year where he didn't really play up to the level of his potential, you would like to keep him in a Miami Dolphins uniform. And get this, he is still 24 years old. He is fairly young. He will turn 25 in a few weeks. So when you look at the potential and the upside, Jenny Leger, if you're Miami and if you're a defense that needs to add more playmakers to that side, finding a way to keep Javon Holland in a Dolphin uniform makes all the sense.
He's still a baby out there, and he's got the right agent for a job. That agent getting some of the top contracts, especially for defensive players out in the NFL. All right, B-Mac, we also have an interesting situation with your Steelers out there at quarterback. So Russell Wilson and Justin Fields both becoming free agents. Wilson kind of resurrected his career this year. Justin Fields still has youth on his side. He has the hope. He has some promise. What's going to happen in Pittsburgh?
Well, for me, I would love to see Pittsburgh go ahead and give the keys to Justin Fields, and here's why. Number one, he's younger. He's only 25 years old. The potential, the upside is clearly there. Number two, you could get Justin Fields, in my opinion, at a better rate than Russell Wilson, because Russell played the majority of the season, and when you look at what he's done in his career, he will command more money than Justin Fields, who only played in 6 ball games. So if you look at that in terms of the financial concerns, you can allocate money elsewhere on your team to become better if you're able to retain a guy like Justin Fields. And the last thing I love about Justin Fields and what he can provide for their offense, Leger, let's keep it real. The Pittsburgh Steelers in 2024, offensively, they lack playmakers. But when you have a guy like Justin Fields in your lineup, he can become another playmaker for your offense, not to mention his ability to be a +1 in the running game. And oh, by the way, make people miss when the pocket collapses. One thing that we learned from Russell Wilson, when the pocket is not there, no one is there in terms of the passing game, creating separation, 2 things going to happen. He's going to throw the football away or he's going to take a sack. At least Justin Fields can give you a glaring piece of hope that he can extend plays when those things happen.
B-Mac is Team Justin Fields. You heard it here. All right, we're going to move to Tampa now. Chris Godwin, he was on pace for career highs in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns before dislocating that left ankle in Week 7. Leger, do you think the Buccaneers will use the franchise tag on Godwin? This would be his 3rd time.
And that's exactly why they won't, because it will be essentially his 3rd time being tagged. And I believe he'll be getting quarterback money if they tag him around $39 million. But this will be an interesting development because Jalen McMillan really showed up big for them down the stretch. And you talked about it, JD. Look at the numbers. And this was only through 7 weeks, B-Mac, right? He was 1st in the NFL in receptions, 2nd in receiving yards. He was 3rd in receiving touchdowns. He was having a career year, an all-pro type year. And the funny thing is, it's like deja vu, because in the 2021 season, that's when he went down with the ACL. They tagged him again and then ultimately paid him. So this will be interesting to see what the Bucs do, because Mike Evans, essentially after next year, they can kind of get off that contract in 2026. Before that season, I believe he's only slated to make about $13 million. And Chris Godwin is still only 28 years old. So maybe he's going to take over as a true number one guy if they pay him, and then Jalen McMillan could be your number two in the future with Mike Evans next year. So this will be an interesting development, but there's no way, JD, they're going to tag Chris Godwin, because you're not going to pay a receiver upwards to $40 million to play receiver, because Godwin's having an all-pro-like year before he got hurt. This will be an interesting development to see what he commands on the open market if he gets there. But I know the Bucs are going to try their best to get something done with him.
Money talks. Well, there's no offseason for this duo right here. Douzable, Bryant, McFadden, thanks for joining us here on HQ, getting us ready for NFL free agency. And you best believe we have you covered every step of the way as we gear up from NFL free agency, the combine, the draft, and more. Keep it locked right here on CBS Sports HQ for all of the latest.
Back on HQ Spotlight, the NFL franchise tagging window opens up tomorrow. The top free agents include Sam Darnold and T. Higgins, who are ranked 1, 2 respectively in Pete Prisco's free agent rankings at CBSSports.com. Higgins, one of 8 players who got the tag last year. Some of these guys were tagged and then signed to long-term deals, like Josh Hines-Allen of Jacksonville. Let's bring in the former 2-time Super Bowl champion, Bryant McFadden, and we will start with T. Higgins, who was tagged last season. How, though, does the situation with Jamar Chase and the contract that he's going to be owed, how is that going to affect how the Bengals can go about figuring out what to do with Higgins?
That's a huge hurdle for Cincinnati, because they had the luxury of tagging T. Higgins a year ago, because Jamar Chase was still playing in the midst of his rookie contract. Now, remember, look, Jamar Chase tried to get a contract done before the start of 2024. Things did not come to fruition. He compromised. He played under his normal contractual agreement. But because of how well he performed, Chris, now he goes into this offseason with all the leverage. And it's safe to say he will get paid, and he will be paid handsomely. He will reset the wide receiver market. Now, what does that do with T. Higgins? Me personally, because of the Jamar Chase potential contract, potential record-breaking contract, they will not be able to tag T. Higgins. I think they have to find a way to kind of navigate the salary cap, try to manipulate the numbers. Of course, Joe Burrow has echoed how important T. Higgins is, and he would love to do anything he needs to do with his contract to try to retain T. Higgins. But because of the contract that Jamar Chase will see, it will make things difficult for T. Higgins, unless T. Higgins decides to take a little less to stay with the Cincinnati Bengals. But in terms of a new tag being issued out to T. Higgins, I don't see that happening this season.
A wide receiver taking less. I don't know that we'll see that, B-Mac. You know that as well as just about anybody. Let's move to a quarterback, and Sam Darnold. And you think that this guy could be tagged by the Vikings but not play for the Vikings. Why is that?
No question. It makes all the sense in the world. I had the luxury of talking with their head coach, Kevin O'Connell, in New Orleans during the Super Bowl week, and he echoed he would love to have Sam Darnold be a part of this team this upcoming season. But he also realized that because of how well he played in the overall team success, he will be a coveted guy in the free agency market at the quarterback position. But, you know, it's safe to say you need to play chess and checkers sometimes, right, Chris? So if they tag Sam Darnold, now they're saying, you know what, we would love for you to stay and be a part of our team under that $40 million tag. But knowing there are quite a few teams that would love to have a guy like Sam Darnold in their lineup, and quarterback needy teams, they could potentially understand and use that tag to get some resources in place if there's a team that would like to trade for Sam Darnold. We kind of saw this happen a year ago with the Carolina Panthers and Brian Burns, and hitting him with the tag and then eventually trading him to the New York Giants and getting nice compensation back in return, knowing that there was a team that wanted his services. So I can see the same thing happening for the Minnesota Vikings. Worst case scenario, they tag Sam Darnold and there isn't any reliable suitors to try to trade for Sam Darnold. Best case scenario, you tag them and you see a team that needs a quarterback. They decide to give you nice draft compensation to go back to you in return of Sam Darnold's services, and now you can go ahead and hand the keys off to J.J. McCarthy.
Let's get to your Steelers, B-Mac. They have a couple of quarterbacks who shared starting reps last season who are both potentially hitting free agency. What should they do with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson?
Me personally, moving forward for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I would try to retain Justin Fields, and here's why. Number one, he's younger. He's 25 years old. He has a high ceiling. He has more potential than the older Russell Wilson. That makes more sense, not just for this season, Chris, but moving forward and trying to add stability at the quarterback position for their organization. Secondly, I believe you can get Justin Fields at a more friendly rate when you look at his compensation compared to the market that Russell potentially will have in place, knowing that Russell played the majority of the season for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he played fairly well. Remember, Justin Fields only played 6 ball games. They were 4-2 in that stretch. So in terms of the financial leverage that Russell has, I don't think Justin Fields will have the same financial leverage. And now you can bring in Justin Fields at a more team-friendly deal compared to what the market will say for Russell Wilson. And now you can allocate money elsewhere in your team to improve dramatically. And then the last thing I'll say in terms of why I believe Justin Fields will be a better route to go for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Chris, you're talking about a Steelers offense that lack playmakers. When you have Justin Fields in the lineup, he can become another playmaker to your offense. Not to mention, he could be a +1 in the running game. And when the pocket collapses, like we've seen time and time again there with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Justin Fields can buy time. He can make people miss. Russell Wilson, if there was no open pass targets in the passing game, 2 things were going to happen. He's going to throw the football away, or he was going to take a sack. That instantly stunts the offensive production offensively. So me personally, all of that into the equation, give me Justin Fields.
You wouldn't tag him, though? You said just you would extend him, you would give him some kind of contract?
Well, you got to find a way to negotiate, most importantly, because the tag for a quarterback, I think, is around $40 million, right? So I think you can get Justin Fields, if you were to extend him, at a lesser rate. The tag would be the last case scenario, in my opinion. But trying to find a way to go ahead and get something done before the market is set for Justin Fields would make more sense. And then you can potentially pay him less than that tag rate of $40 million per year moving forward. Maybe something like a 2 or 3 year deal, I think, would definitely be serviceable for either side.
You want to talk about an expensive tag? How about one for Chris Godwin if the Bucs elect to go that way again? Because he's already been tagged twice, and each time you get tagged, the price goes up. What do they do then with a player who's coming off an injury-riddled season?
Well, to your point, Chris Godwin will not get tagged. I will get franchise tagged before Chris Godwin with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'm not even playing, so clearly that's disco dead. But if you're Tampa, you find a way to keep Chris Godwin in a Buccaneers uniform. One thing that we have grown to see with Chris Godwin, he has a nice quarterback relationship with Baker Mayfield. When he's in the offense, he's better. Before he got injured, look at what he did in the first 7 weeks. He was top 3 in every major wide receiver category. That's impressive. So now if you can bring him back to the fold, he is your reliable 1B to your 1A in Mike Evans. You have McMillan, who really served as a quality number 3 option. And when you look at Mike Evans, no question, Mike Evans continues to put up Hall of Fame numbers, Chris. But it's safe to say Mike Evans is closer to the end of his career than the middle or the beginning. So whenever that time comes for Mike Evans to step away, you already have a wide receiver 1 in place who's been acting like a wide receiver 1 while playing next to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So I think if you're Tampa, you find a way to extend Chris Godwin. He's been more than a serviceable player for your offense. He's done nothing but great things since being drafted by Tampa years ago from Penn State. And yes, he's been injured, but he's showing the ability to bounce back from season-ending injuries to give you sound production.
Bryant McFadden with us here on HQ Spotlight, talking franchise tag window, which opens tomorrow. You can find Pete Prisco's list of the top 100 free agents at CBSSports.com. Godwin just outside the top 10. We are your place for NFL all the time, 365, 7 days a week. HQ with NFL news, highlights, and scores. And it's the offseason. Really, there's no offseason in the NFL. It is a year-round sport, and we've got you covered every day.